Hello, everyone. It's Kapil and Bernadette again. We are going to continue talking about why men and women are so angry.
Yeah.
So last week we talked about men's perspective, we talked about women's perspective, and historically what's been happening, from a conditions perspective and from growing up in culture and what men are told and what women are told. We talked about that, and we were going into this place of how are there enough spaces for men and women to express anger. But before we go there, I think Bernadette and I have been talking about how to actually go a little deeper in these things. So I think what would be good to talk about is like, as a woman, what do you think where men's anger is, and what's the impact of, when you read things on Facebook, or when you come across men and you can feel their anger, like what's the impact and what goes on in your head?
I think when I read it on Facebook, I'm a lot more able to not jump into it's wrong or anything like that. I have a lot more ability there. But it's just on the spot anger. It's the, when you asked me first that question, I was like, it's fear. And I go into a mode of self-preservation, which is fight or flight mode, but I'm scared.
Yeah.
Like, what's going to happen to me? So in that position, I care very little what's happening to you. I have no curiosity. Like, all my attention is on me and finding an escape route.
Yeah.
And for me, that was like, oh, this is an interesting, because if I'm operating from that point, it's like a live wire.
Yeah.
I'll do anything to escape from what I perceive as danger, whether the danger is real or not.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. Like when I read into a lot of when people talk about, each other, men and women, and I can really feel the kind of hurt, especially from men's point of view. Like there's some kind of hurt they've had in the past that most of us carry. It's like either it was a breakup in the past, or in relationships something went wrong. And I think we touched upon this, that not last week but a while ago, that if we don't process our last relationships or the places where we are resentful or something gets stuck in our connections, then we bring that in all our other connections and relationships. The other people have to pay the price for it. And I see that quite a lot, I think, both from men and women. And if I were to say, what I see with women, the way it comes across is that there's a lot of emotions bundled up. It's like a pressure cooker. So a lot of the time I can experience, physically, I can experience that something's going to blow up, and within that, it's like, can I actually be present to that? Am I open? Because traditionally speaking, I can't, I've avoided conflict in my life. And it's only last few years that I've become more present to that. I can stay present in the conflict, in the anger, and yet a lot of the time I get knocked out. It's like, whoa, there's anger, I need to run away from here.
Yeah. Is it from a perspective of more I can't handle this? Or because for me, for example, is I want to run away because I'm scared.
Yeah.
So what is it more for you?
I don't think it's
I don't think
fear
for
me.
Fear. Yeah.
It's not fear. It's I don't know how to handle.
You can't
that
fix it.
amount.
Yeah.
I can't fix it.
Yeah.
Man, I can't fix it. And maybe something like, have I done something wrong? Have I done something wrong?
So you make yourself wrong immediately.
That or it's just like the intensity of emotions that I don't know how to handle. I don't know how to hold that much energy, or that definitely was the case.
Yes.
And yeah, so I want to go into segue into relationships.
Yeah.
Right. So there's I want to talk about different types of anger, especially when it comes to relating with other people. And my experience is there's definitely two categories, if not more. One, I feel, is that where we bring resentment from the past, or something happened and
they come sideways type of anger.
They come sideways, which doesn't feel good. Like it feels constrictive. It feels yucky. It feels like, oh, I really don't want to be in the presence of that kind of feeling. And then there is the other anger, which is more about, can I handle that much energy? Which is like, sometimes energy gets stuck. It's like with Luca and I, we have this often where there's like something like scratchy between us, something scratchy between us, and we just start talking about stuff and to start with, it's frustrating, it's kind of like edgy, and then it gets scratchy, and then we get like angry at each other. But if we just like look at the energy underneath it, we end up really just shouting at each other. And the end result of it is that the energy that was stuck, it gets moving, it comes out. And afterwards, we've had so many times where we just like, we did that, and then we sat there laughing at each other. It's like,
I know, this is the funny part, when you're like, and then I'm no longer angry. I should start laughing.
Right. And the more and more that happens, I'm surprised by it, and also not surprised by it. It's like, oh, it was stuck energy that needed to move. It also has this quality of not having any more residue. Yeah. Because by the end, my experience is that my system is smooth. Yes. It doesn't feel icky or yucky anymore. Right? Yeah. So
I'm saying, like, it's so obvious that Kapil is a man because two categories at least. And I was thinking, this is so funny. But in the sense, that's what I feel is for me, it would be, there is something that feels that having an explosion or having an openness is not gonna, because it's not the source cause. So it's just like somebody's having a go to see, where I can put this load of charge, and then that person can't part with it. Basically saying, are you my bean? I can barf on you. and being aware of that and saying, no, that's not what I want to do. Yeah. And there is something needs to be released, and we're trying to negotiate how it gets released. Yeah. And then when you do it, it came out as anger, but it just speaks to the presence of mind that you and Luca have grown, through this, as a partnership, to be like, we agree to stay there, because that level of intimacy is quite rich and quite deep. Like when you're going to stay there, so that can come out, and then realize that, oh, we just needed this to move, and now we can laugh, but we don't go into like, as a woman, like to complain and Kapil is a piece of shit because we scream at each other, or that level, like it finishes, and having that approval of that's how the curve had to do. And I think I told you that it's one of the things is to get to the point where you can do that is not an easy thing. It's not a thing that I, as a woman, in a relationship, I feel like I need to release some anger. I go and scream to my partner because there is some anger. Yeah. Because it's like, and a man doesn't owe you holding space for that. In the same way that a woman doesn't owe a man to hold space for his anger, is the same. Yeah. Yeah, and I think I want to go into space holding as well, but I want to park it. I want to go a little bit deeper into this place of relationship and anger and how it's stressed, because I think it's very nuanced in some ways. Yes. Because when I even talk about it, I can hear the voices where it's like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. Like people are supposed to hold on to their own emotions and like just like come to each other perfect. And I don't know. Allow me to laugh at that. It's like, it's a lie. Whenever those thoughts come to your head, it's bullshit. Yeah. Okay. End of the announcement. Right. So, and part of it is it's a practice. It doesn't always go like that. No. There are moments when it does go like that. And I want to come to this idea of power. Because I think power is seen as something very different in our culture to what I now understand it is. So my understanding of power is when
I am in reactive mode, like impulse arises. You, for example, are angry in real time, and how do I react to it? And when I'm in that immediate response place, how conscious I can be and remember that maybe there's part of me that's getting triggered, but I can like stay conscious and play with it. I think the ability to be that responsive in real time is what power is. And I think that what do you think? Anyway, my mind's going through. What do you think?
It's so much energy. So I was thinking about how to build that. And of course, we have practices that Om is one great practice to do that. But to translate what you learn to Om, or even to start from scratch, is the ability to remove all the withholds. It's less likely that you're going to enter into a, I can't even stop, like, because power, the definition we have is the ability of whether you can't stop it there and choose a different direction, which is, as you say, very different from our notion of power. The notion of power is I do what which is not. It's
like overpowering.
Yeah, overpowering, dominance rather than power, force. But if you have a practice that you use to remove all the withholds, all the resentment, all the as much as you can, there might be some stuff that is unconscious, that's fine. But consciously, all the resentment that you have, you're more likely to on the spot be like, do I want to go in that direction? Can I stay here? And it takes time. But if you consistently do things like fear inventory or with wrong withholds with people, telling the truth is probably one of the hardest, but it's the most effective. And then you can start finding those places. That's on the, your mind, handling your mind. On handling your body is remember that you need to breathe. Because most of the time, if I go out, I'm not breathing. Because I'm in anger, I'm in a fight or flight. So it means that and if I'm on the other side where I'm scared, I'm also not breathing. So one of the things it took me a while, but now I've trained, like sometimes I'm like, and then I can catch my own body saying, breathe, and then everything changed. Once it oxygenated, like the limbic response is like, I don't have to stay here, or I can do this. But it takes practice, and as you said, you're gonna get it wrong a ton of times. So give yourself, a break. Don't think that because you did it wrong once, you should quit. No, actually, it's just the beginning.
And this is what I love and hate about relationships. is because if you really look at it as a practice, and as a playing field, because you put yourself in scenarios where your limits get tested. Like this morning, Luca and I had a really, we were having conversations, one thing led to the other, and it was like really fighting with each other. And I was thinking about it, is like, wow, like there are times when I just want to be proven right. And we're both in that space. And like it comes down to that power, is that I just didn't have enough power in that moment to think, oh, what's mine? Like what is mine to look at? How am I creating this? As opposed to finger pointing and blaming, because it's easier, right? I don't have to take any responsibility in that. And for that reason, I find that relationships are a great place to, in a good way and bad way.
Relationship is the place to do that. So do not let whatever deceive you that relationship is to hold hands and happily ever after. Relationship is the place where all your limits will get tested.
Right. Relationship as a practice. That's
always.
What we're talking
whether
about.
You want it or not, it could be a practice of doom or a practice of growth.
Yes. So with that, I think let's talk about holding space. And how can people what can people do, both men and women, to express their anger, to be more in touch with their anger? And you mentioned earlier about holding space in relationship, but I think I want to go beyond that. It's like community.
Yes.
Like
Actually, that was part of my point, in the sense that at least in the current conditions, mainstream condition, for a man to hold space for a woman and vice versa, you have to train with your brothers and your sisters.
Right.
Because going from 0 to 100 is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So the space of communities that you can only learn about anger when you either witness or express anger in that sibling space, where there is a lot of love and approval, and it's not just I learned this trick that I saw on a video about like holding space and people screaming. Kapil, you're like getting distracted.
Adriana's sorry.
That's some other thing.
There's too much energy. I was checked out.
Hello, Adriana.
Hi.
Kapil,
I need to know. What is that a talking about? I'm checked out. Anyway, sorry.
But it's a lot of energy. I get it, and it's about this doing this in connection with your sisters or your brothers, because to take that into a relationship, it's a level of maturity, like a child. You learn how to manage your energy with other children before you can take it into a more connected space, and you need a space with love and approval. But also not because you saw a video on Facebook that going and screaming on a field or something, or beating a dummy. It means that you have the right people around you to hold you. It's actually, as Adriana put it, advanced technology. Like, that's one. The people around you, the level of gravity, love, and approval that they have to be able to show you what is needed to be on the other side. It takes a lot of practice. It's not a one-day workshop or something like that. It's a lot of gravity to do that. And as you mentioned, if you're a woman and let's say that you have the great idea to go with your sisters to a park and go into a scream out, the possibilities that they're gonna call an ambulance and think that you're insane. Because for women, expressing anger equals to insane.
And for men, it's violence. Right?
Yeah, so they'll call the police to take you away because you're a danger.
I actually do want to talk about that, because I think right now I work with a group of men, and we have been talking about like how do we create space for people to get in touch with that part of themselves and like let some of it out. And really, it's felt like it needs a lot of planning. It needs a lot of logistics. Living in a city like London, where
people call the police just because somebody's near them,
Right. It's just like, how do we actually create more spaces for us to let that part out? Because I think it needs for me personally, over the last 5 or 6 years, I have been able to do that because I put myself in situations where I was held by other group of people, where I was able to like let some of that out, and then actually even get into a practice of it. But and even then, there are times when I was like, oh, I need to do something like that every 2-3 months, because it builds up, and you want to be able to like let it out. Yeah. And there's just not. Especially if you're living in urban areas, there's not places for us to be able to do that.
And to express it physically. Because one thing is that you can rip it, on a fermentary or on a verbal withhold, but to actually go into embody the anger, which is the necessary thing to move it. Yeah.
It's so funny though, because I remember I attended my first men's workshop about 6-7 years ago, and there was an exercise in there about getting in touch with your anger, and I just laughed at people, and I was like, me? I am beyond anger.
Yeah, another lie. Nobody is.
At that time it felt true, but I didn't realize I had numbed out all of that part and it was coming out sideways.
What happened when it came out? Were you foaming?
It took good like 5 or 6 people.
Isn't it amazing? No,
like for about an hour, and then just like I just like fell on the floor and like curled up and cried for about half an hour. afterwards, like after about an hour of just like battling with that.
Yeah.
It was, the experience of it was almost like there was this cage, and I was inside that cage, and I wouldn't, like, it was locked from inside, and I just wouldn't open it, you know. And I had to like get, only because I had an environment where I could push myself to that edge and then let it out. And it felt like literally like an animal being released out of cage.
That's what I was talking, like you cannot just do it with your neighbor who just it's a precise
you need people who have the energetic capacity to hold that.
It's a surgery of your psyche and your body. So
sorry, go on. I was talking about this documentary, The Work.
Which I told you.
You know, that's the kind of experience I had.
But if you like, by all means, everybody should watch that documentary.
Definitely watch it.
Because the level, they do surgeries.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like much, but when you're feeling there, it's like, oh my God, they're really releasing that animal in the cage.
Yeah.
But the physicality of it, the space, and it's so much training and mastery from these people that for me, it was like, that's the level. That's the level of gravity that somebody, because the people who are hosting, isn't it? They are like a tree.
Very grounded.
Yeah, they're so grounded, and they're like so much rightness about what's happening. Because there is a lot of like, oh, you go into like physical things. This is dangerous, as you say, and they have no charge, no shame about it.
Yeah.
So,
and I think with that, I also want to say, like, when we are with people, I think there's a place where we can acknowledge ourselves, and I think other people, that there is probably a lot of pent up stuff.
Yeah.
Both in terms of maybe there's like past hurt and resentments and withholds, and partly that we just have so much energy that we just don't know how to
where
let
to
it
put
out,
it.
where to put it. And it's just interesting that how can we just allow that space, like just be more understanding with each other, and not suddenly make it about ourselves that we are bad people. Or take it personally.
Yeah. As you say, like
that's a difficult part, I think. But
because we make ourselves wrong.
Right.
So it's growing a practice of self-approval. Something like writing gratitudes to yourself.
Yeah.
It's tough, like, and for women to say, men saying a practice of going to the mirror and saying, "I'm a good man, I'm a good person." It's painful to a woman to go into a mirror and say, "I'm beautiful." But it builds on the long term as a daily practice of approval and truth. It's as painful as it sounds to start. For that, I would recommend a coach to train and then use. Start telling your friends, "I have a lot of anger that I'm working through."
Yeah.
So at least you tell them. And to tell and to be specific, like, I have a lot of anger, I'm working through that, and right now I would like not to talk about the following subjects.
Yeah.
And it's you're putting them in a very specific container because you're being honest about where you're at and what you need.
Yeah. I actually want to also say for anyone who might listen to this and they're orgasmic meditation practitioners, that practice can be really amazing to channel.
Yeah, the angry arms. Remember Kapil used to do angry arms?
Yeah, work with someone who is experienced or coached.
Yeah, flying solo in this one, you may get there, but just what it means, you can go Icarus and then melt on the way and crash in the sea. So for all this that we're talking, you have to have somebody who's more experienced than you.
Yeah.
Call it a coach. If you do therapy, you do counseling, a mentor. On your own, it won't go where you want to go.
Yeah. I also want to touch upon, like, for anyone who's listening, there's actually, there's physical violence out there as well. And I also want to talk about, like, knowing our boundaries and our range, both as someone who's holding the space or someone who is, like, letting it out in some ways, like being really aware of your own boundaries and other people's boundaries, and have some way of communicating where you're container where you're going out of your range. You know, like it's like there's no way I want this to be seen as like, oh, a free pass to express your
which
anger.
is what I was talking about. There is a way that sometimes people, you know, you say you need to express your anger more. We don't mean take your partner as a punching bag. Like, this is not like, if that's what you heard, it's not what we meant. That's what you heard. So, like, your partner, this is why starting with your partner is probably not the best starting point. Your friends, your sisters, you know, people who are in the same kind of research are a better starting point. Your partner doesn't owe you holding space.
Yeah.
Record it in your mind for anything. Yeah. Your partner is not a space holder. There might be a point when you would agree to hold space for each other's answer, but it's not an immediate step. And if you're already there, reconsider how you can, you say, create a container. I don't know if I already said this in other videos, but where you both agree that if somebody says stop, you both stop. Like, no questions asked. And having just that level of like, we are going to stop. I'm calling stop and you stop.
Yeah.
And then you can start creating that possibility.
Right, totally. So I think I want to leave people with some kind of either summary or like how they can start to recognize where they're at and how they can progress in terms of just realizing that what kind of work they need to do and how to go about sort of just expressing and digesting and integrating.
I'm just going to give you something really simple that I saw when I was training. So if you do like this, and you press it, and if it feels normal, you have a lot of pent-up anger, like this. So it means all this needs to be tense. But this is when I learned to do that, because it was an exercise, and I'm like, I can feel the pressure. But that, when you having a conversation and you feel that sensation, that's anger.
Right. Okay.
And it's before your mind is saying, I'm angry at this person. It can be literally, I've entered places where I don't know anybody, and I immediately feel like, and I'm already like in fight mode, like this is what this is doing.
Right.
So I'm ready to give you a punch. and to recognize that is to be like, oh,
be careful when you talk to that.
I don't punch people anymore. No, it's true. Not anymore. I don't really go for physical violence as a default. But this show me how much and how many places I enter. Literally, I open a door and I immediately there, just to have that awareness. You don't need to make yourself wrong. It's to say, oh, something in my body got triggered.
Yeah.
And I'm in a position where I'm ready to fight.
Yeah.
And I don't need to know what is it. I don't need to stop it. I don't need to make it wrong. I just need to increase my attention a tiny bit.
I love that. Yeah, thank you. And I think from my point of view, I think if including me, where we go into any kind of blame, you know, we're like, oh no, this is happening because of you or them. It's a good place to just notice maybe there's something for you to look at and digest and investigate. That there may be some underlying anger there to process. And I think what I would say is that it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time and self-inquiry to process that, and also then to learn over a period of time that it's just energy, and how do you actually start to move that energy through practices, both writing practices or physical practices, and then just learning how to play with it. I think is what I would say is a good starting point. Or you can message Dete, direct message Dete. She likes to receive direct message.
No, my thing is practice. That's the thing, you know. This is the advertisement part of the live stream, where I tell you what I do, which is I work with practice. I tailor practice to people. So they create an engine and they can digest that, and it doesn't come sideways, at least with the frequency that it's coming. And they can create a life that they enjoy rather than constantly being like.
Right. Yeah, I think practices are just absolutely crucial. So if people want to work with you, want to connect with you,
personal message
or comment. And same with me. If you have any questions, if you want to talk about any of the aspects we are covering in any of these Facebook Lives, please feel free to message me here or comment. I also have a closed Facebook group for men, where it's a closed space where men can actually talk about their emotions and challenges openly and discuss. So again, I will put a link to that here, so you can join in and join the conversation. Other than that, let us know what you feel about these Facebook Lives, if you are getting value from it, what you would like to hear more of. We love controversial topics. We love provocative topics. And we want to share. We want to have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
See you until next week. Bye.